So the first note that I wrote today is a question. Why the suit? So I'll tell the answer first. I wore the suit today because I just bought it yesterday and I wanted to show it off. No, but here's what's going on. So some people might come in here. We're a church, right? We're a center, whatever you want to call it, and it's Easter Sunday. So people come in with a preconceived idea, with this notion of what Easter Sunday is, right? But those of you who've been here for a while will understand that we don't specifically teach a Christian theology here in the way that most Christian religions are laid out, that Jesus Christ is the personal Lord and Savior and yada, yada, yada. So there, I've talked about Jesus. However, people may come in here and think, uh-oh, the new reverend. Has he brought into this center a belief that Easter is somehow more sacred than any other day? Maybe. Has the new reverend secretly infiltrated the centers for spiritual living as a religious zealot who's going to seek to indoctrinate you with some deep religious ideology? And the answer is yes. My mind is reeling today. I have so much going on. I have so many thoughts going on that this could easily have turned into a 3 or 4 hour talk. I will try and limit myself to 2. So today is Easter. Easter, the day that we come to celebrate Iostre, the great mother goddess of the Saxon people of Northern Europe. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, today is the celebration of Ostara, the Norse goddess of fertility. Yeah, you like that? Or are we celebrating Ishtar, the Assyrian and Babylonian goddess of fertility, war, love, cover your children's ears, and sex? Yes, today is about fertility. We honor the fertile nature of this world through these brilliant symbols: eggs and chicks and rabbits. Yes, I get what this holiday is all about. Oh, wait. So there's this other thing that I found when I was doing my research on Easter online. Gerald L. Barry, author of Religions of the World, wrote, about 200 BC, which I will never say, I always say BCE because now it's more commonly accepted as before the Common Era rather than saying before Christ. So I will say about 200 BCE and I will correct him. Mystery cults began to appear in Rome just as they had earlier in Greece. Most notable was this, I think it's Cybele cult. Of course, I could have looked up how to pronounce the word, right? Centered on Vatican Hill. Associated with this cult was that of her lover Attis, a god of ever-reviving vegetation. Now listen to this. Born of a virgin, he died and was reborn annually. The festival began as a day of blood on Black Friday, and culminated after 3 days in a day of rejoicing over the resurrection. So there we go. So today is a day about rebirth, renaissance, reawakening, renewal. And then there was this guy who came along later and changed the world. Do you know who I'm talking about? Who do you think I'm talking about? Jesus. Wrong. If you thought Saul of Tarsus, then you would be correct. Saul of Tarsus. So there's this guy, Saul of Tarsus, right? And he is a Roman. And he was dedicated to the persecution of the early disciples of this guy named Jesus.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. Ew. You know, so I wrote, so this guy, Saul of Tarsus, he's walking to Damascus. Sounds like the setup for a joke, right? So one day Saul is walking to Damascus, and on the road appears the resurrected Jesus in a great light. And Saul is struck blind. He is struck blind. Now, mind you, again, this is a Roman who is persecuting early disciples of Jesus. Has a vision, struck blind. 3 days later, his eyesight is restored, and he converts. He converts. He changes his name to Paul and begins to tell everyone that Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah. Now, Paul, you may or may not know, is responsible for the majority of the New Testament. Most of what is written there is attributed to Paul. So he starts telling everyone that Jesus is the Messiah. So I ask, what is the Messiah? What is the Messiah? The Messiah, as prophesied in the Hebrew Bible, is the deliverer of the Jewish people. He is the final king who would rule to the end of history and unite the tribes of Israel. So are you confused yet? Because now I've got Jesus, I've got Paul, I've got, the Norse goddess of fertility. Now I'm talking about, uniting the tribes of Israel. So what is Easter? I'm getting there. So now this is the part of the talk where I'm going to say a little bit about Jesus. Easter is the end of the Holy Week, which is the end of the Lenten period, where 40 days and 40 nights ago, not counting Sundays, I invited you all to participate in Lent by saying, let's end negative thinking. So we're at the end of Lent. And as I asked last week, how's that going for you, ending negative thinking? And can you turn every day into an opportunity to practice this idea of Lent, to end negative thinking, because that will change your life? But back to a little bit of the history. So Holy Week starts on Palm Sunday, which was last week, right? I talked a little bit about Palm Sunday last week, I think. I don't remember now. I never remember what I talk about. I just get up here and go. Goes through Good Friday and Easter Sunday. So Palm Sunday is the day that is representation. It's talked about Jesus rides into the city of Jerusalem on a donkey. And so that's what Palm Sunday commemorates. You go through the week and you get to Thursday, Maundy Thursday, and that is a representation of the Last Supper. Now, are you familiar with the Last Supper? Mm-hmm. Yes, a little bit. I'm going to tell you all about it, so, sit back, relax. We've got another, hour and 50 minutes. Well, the Last Supper was it's actually now thought that it was most likely a Passover Seder. So, I went to this Seder last night. I did. I went to a Seder last night because we are also, this weekend was Passover in the Jewish faith. Now, I had never been to a Seder before, and what my hosts don't know is that I actually went and looked it up because I wanted to know what to expect, right? And I love it. I love the whole concept of it. And I've started thinking, oh my gosh, we need to have New Thought Seders. It makes so much sense to me. So, traditional Seder on Passover is commemorating the story of Exodus, the freeing of the ancient Israelites from the oppression of Pharaoh in Egypt. And in this narrative, which at the Seder dinner is told in a ritualistic fashion, it is recounted how God inflicted 10 plagues upon Egypt before Pharaoh finally freed the slaves. The final plague was the death of all Egyptian firstborn children. Now, the Israelites were instructed to mark their doors with the blood of a spring lamb. So the Spirit of the Lord would know who to pass over. You hear that? Who to pass over the firstborn in these homes. So Egypt is struck with the plague. Pharaoh says, fine, go. You're freed, right? But they have to leave so quickly that they could not wait for the bread dough to rise. So this idea is commemorated in the Seder by the consumption of unleavened bread, the matzah. Now, also during the Seder is a requirement to drink 4 cups of wine. I have no problem with this part. No problem there at all. And there are many other parts of the Seder. But again, I am trying to do this talk within 2 hours. Now, one of the wonderful elements about the Seder, and the reason that I think that New Thought could incorporate this idea, is because it is encouraged to participate. And it is encouraged to bring people who are not of the faith in to participate. And it is very much encouraged to ask questions. Because it is through questioning, it is through understanding that we begin to know each other better, to understand who and what we are. So I'm sitting at this Seder last night, right? Again, it sounds like the setup for a joke. But I'm sitting at this Seder, and somebody, knowing that I'm a minister, turns to me and says, so what's the deal with Jesus and the Passover? Like, so I hear that this Last Supper was a Passover meal? I'm like, well, yes, Jesus was Jewish. Yes. And the Passover Seder, the Last Supper was a Passover Seder. And so now we're back to Holy Week. Maundy Thursday. The Last Supper. The unleavened bread, which Jesus holds up and says, take of this, for this is my body. The cup of wine. Drink of this, for this is my blood. Now this gets real heavy, right? I don't really, who knows whether this really happened? I don't know. But now you have a whole new concept for these ideas, which means something different in the Jewish faith. They now mean something in what we traditionally call the Christian faith. And you have the Eucharist, the Holy Communion. Now, following the Last Supper, Judas Iscariot, one of the apostles, betrays Jesus to the Romans. And Jesus is arrested, he is tried, and he is crucified. This is what happened. This is all basically what Good Friday is all about. I will say it was not so good for Jesus. The Romans were upset because Jesus basically challenged their authority. He challenged their authority by understanding that he was an individualized expression of God, just as we all are, and that there is no one man who has dominion over anyone else. So we still haven't gotten to Easter, have we? I've given you your whole, Bible lesson on the Old Testament and New. I might get back to the Norse god of fertility, I don't know. So Easter Sunday, is a commemoration of Jesus' resurrection from the dead. Does that make any sense to you? I get it. There are people who live by this faith. And I'm sure that, if I have any of my traditional Christian friends who are watching this video, they will probably never speak to me again. But I also know what I believe. And I know that I hold firm to what I believe. So 2,000 years after this event, this story makes up the basis for what is now the world's most populous religion. But what does this have to do with chocolate and Easter eggs and bunnies? Not a darn thing. Those things were taken by the Christians from the festivals that honored these fertility gods, and incorporate it into this so that they could take all of these pagans and turn them into Christians. Now, all of these stories are related. Everything I've told you is related. They all deal with renewal and rebirth. They all deal with freedom from bondage. And they all deal with the reframing of thought. Now, I will never claim to know or profess which of these stories may or may not be historical fact, but here's what I do know. For me, Easter is a reminder that I am not relegated to the confines of my body. I am not relegated to the world of form. I am something much greater, and so are you. Within each and every one of us is something bigger, a divine energy which is expressing at all times by means of us, constantly creating of itself and outpouring itself as our lives. What I know and what I am reminded of on Easter is that at any time I can break free of the bondage of destructive thinking. If my life is creative, then my life is done unto me as I believe. If I believe the destructive thoughts that are going on in my mind, that's what happens. That is what my life becomes. So today I remind myself that I am resurrected in every moment of my life through the resurrection and rebirth and renewal of my own thinking. I couldn't do a talk without an Ernest Holmes quote, right? Ernest Holmes writes in The Science of Mind, the resurrection, and by the way, Easter doesn't show up once in the entire Science of Mind textbook. I looked it up. Resurrection shows up a lot. But Ernest Holmes writes in The Science of Mind, the resurrection is the death of the belief that we are separated from God. To practice the presence of God is to awaken within us the Christ consciousness. Christ is the soul of God in man. I have to take some water. So, Christ is not Jesus' last name. Christ means anointed. It means a deeper, higher understanding of our own divinity. The Christ within is a consciousness that we all share. So, you remember Paul? Remember I was talking about Paul? So I mentioned before that Paul changed the world, and he did. He could be considered the one who deified Jesus and made him separate from other men. But that's not what Jesus taught. Jesus taught we are all one. Jesus understood the unity of man, that you and I are all one energy, one light, one life. Jesus taught the kingdom of heaven is within. The kingdom of heaven is a state of mind. And you're either living in heaven now or you're not. And if you're not, you're living in the other place, right? But it is available to you now. Remember at the beginning I said, there is no time or space in the mind of God. There is no destination. There is no place to get to. Heaven is not something that is far off. Heaven is something we live right here and right now. Jesus also said, the Father and I are one. He was not talking about him and him alone, him and himself alone. He was speaking the I in the sense that we are all the I am. The great divine is who each and every one of us are. That's the divinity of man. Jesus also taught, "It is done unto you as you believe," which is the law of cause and effect. That as you think, as you believe, it becomes so in experience. So, Jesus of Nazareth believed in the science of mind. That is what he taught. It was other people who deified him and made him something else. And Jesus never said that these ideas were exclusive to him. Never, not once. So today, on this day of Easter, I invite you to rise above limiting concepts that are holding you back. Resurrect your own life. Be reborn now through your own thinking and your own understanding of who you are, which is God. Today, I invite you to shine forth as the light of the divine. Because it is true that we are all the light. Now, did you think you would get through today without at least one Bible quote? Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before men. Don't hide it under a bushel. Let it shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father. A little reframing here. The Father, the divine within. Let it shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify the great divine which is in heaven, that which is within you. This is what Jesus taught. So today is the day, right here and right now, to let your light shine. So I invite you to rise and let it shine. It is your responsibility. It is your responsibility and no one else's. And that's what I have to offer to you today. And I so appreciate you. I love you. I honor you. And I give great, great thanks for you. Namaste.